Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review and a rant on the 1995 sequel, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. Terror never rests in peace, even when it probably should. Now, this is one of those films that was a disaster behind the scenes, and if you ask me, was also a complete and total dumpster fire on the screen. Um, and the disastrous production is a big reason why the film is as bad as it is. Apparently, there was just constant infighting among different members of the crew and the producers in terms of how they wanted to handle the particular storyline or what they wanted to do with the movie. So it was just an absolute mess. And no one really knew precisely what they were doing, or no one really had any reason to be that invested in the film in terms of the cast or the crew, especially like the cast. No one really was that invested in delivering like the best possible performance acting wise, because everything was so chaotic. I mean, look no further than a sequence literally like a few minutes into the movie with this extra who plays like this nurse or something who works with the Thorn cult. And other reviewers have pointed this out, but it honestly begs repeating because it's so unbelievable. This extra is clearly laughing before she says her line of dialogue in what is supposed to be a tense sequence where she's trying to tell Jamie that, oh, here's your baby, now get out of here. You better run before Michael Myers or the Thorn cult gets you. And here's this fucking actress, this extra, and she's fucking chuckling. Like, how? That's because she doesn't care. And that's because the director and the producers and everyone else behind the scenes clearly didn't know precisely how to handle things the right way and made things an absolute rough ride for no reason other than ego and the fact that they wanted things done their way. And as a result, they missed a blatant instance of someone not giving a shit on camera. So, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers is directed by Joe Chappelle, and his direction is not the worst that I've ever seen, but it's still not really anything that special. I wouldn't even say that this is a good job when it comes to the direction. The film looks very flat and dead, and in large part that's due to Joe's directing in this film. Any sequence that's supposed to have some genuine suspense is just really deadened and dull because of how flat the direction is. And I think in large parts because I don't think Joe really had his heart in this film, especially in the reshoots that took place later on, which consisted of the majority of this film's climax. That entire climax looks really lifeless and cheap. That's another thing. The direction in this film, it's so substandard and subpar that the movie looks like it's a Showtime original movie. It doesn't look like a theatrical film. And I mean, I wasn't a very big fan of Dominique Oefenen-Girard and how he handled the production of Halloween 5, but he's a much better director than Joe Chappelle, at least from what I saw here. Joe Chappelle did a decent job with Phantoms, which I actually didn't mind, but here, I just thought it was a really poor job. Overuse of lightning effects to the point where it just completely takes you out of the film. The strobe light effects didn't really do anything to accentuate or enhance the intensity or the overall impact of the hospital room massacre sequence. It just gave me a headache. And there are a lot of moments like that where I don't think Joe really knew how to use lighting in the best way to create a effectively eerie mood or atmosphere. Say whatever you want about Dominique Offen-Girard or other directors who had directed Halloween films previously. They know how to handle the shoot in a way to create the right amount of atmosphere that this franchise is known for. This looked like a MTV music video or, like I said, a Showtime original movie. I also don't think Joe got the best performances from his cast. Like I said, somebody was literally laughing during their take and didn't really do anything in order to correct that. Paul Rudd delivers one of his worst performances, but you know what? He was a pretty young and unknown actor at the time, so not going to be too hard on him, but he sucked. And maybe a better director might have been able to kind of rein him in a little bit, because there's a lot of moments where it seemed like he was just fucking joking around. He didn't take it seriously, and it was very obvious. And the only actors that really delivered good performances were the professionals, like the ones that had years of experience and just wanted to do the best that they possibly could. Like Donald Pleasance and what would go on to be his last on-screen performance, and someone like Bradford English or Kim Darby. And even someone like Marianne Hagan, I thought her performance was fine. But the bigger problem with Kara Strode is just how boring and dull that character is. That character of Kara Strode is just a poor woman's Laurie Strode, right down to the personality, to the overall approach, to the characterization, and it just pales in comparison. And honestly, it's a good way to sum up this film. It pales in comparison to the 1978 classic Halloween, or even the 1981 film Halloween 2, or even Halloween 4. So yeah, the direction was a problem. And originally Fred Walton was actually attached to this project, but he dropped out due to, I think, maybe some issues with the way things were being handled with the production, or he had a scheduling conflict, or he just didn't want to do it. But either way, he wound up not doing the film. And there were some rumors early on that Scott Spiegel was initially courted for this particular sequel, but things fell through. I would have loved to have seen what Scott Spiegel would have done with this, because he did a great job with Intruder. I think he's the one that directed that, and I thought that was a really, solid slasher movie from a directorial standpoint. So I think Scott Spiegel could have done a good job. It would have been interesting to have seen, Scott Spiegel's take on Halloween, instead of Joe Chappelle, who at this time, I think he just did a bunch of music videos, and that's really all that he was known for the most part. I don't know why the Accods or why Dimension went with Joe Chappelle over other potential options to direct this movie. Maybe it's because I just wanted to get it in theaters as quickly as possible so that it could make a profit. Because Dimension wound up winning the rights away from New Line. New Line was the main competition for the Halloween rights, and Dimension paid up and ultimately got the rights for the franchise. So I think they just wanted to get one out as soon as possible, just pump one out. And the Accods were all for that. Because I know there's a lot of people who look at the Accods, especially Mustafa, as some grandfather of the franchise. and talk about how he really cared about this franchise and he cared about doing things right and he cared about Michael Myers and these characters. And to me personally, I don't see it. He cared about the bottom line. He cared about how much money he was going to make in the box office, because he stood idly by and did nothing once again when the same mistakes were made when it comes to the characterization, when it comes to the story. He also did nothing to stand up for Danielle Harris, who wanted to be in this film and return as Jamie, and even spent like thousands of dollars out of her own pocket to register herself as an adult through the legal system so that she could work the long hours, because she was only 17 at the time. But that didn't lead to anything, because Mustafa or the producers or Dimension, nobody would bat for her and say, hey, she deserves to get paid at least the $5,000 so that she can, make up for the payments that she had to make to register herself as an adult so that she could actually perform the duties that she needed to do for this particular role. And nope, nobody backed her. She was completely given the raw deal, told to fuck off, essentially. One of the producers pretty much told her that she's not that important of a character, and we're not going to pay you $5,000. And rightfully so, Danielle Harris was like, well, fuck you then. And she ended up getting replaced by JC Brandy, and the death of Jamie had no impact. It just gave me nothing but a shrug in the end, because don't know anything about this adult Jamie. And JC Brandy, just honestly thought she kind of sucked. Not kinda, I thought she did suck. She had no charisma, she had no personality, she had no gravitas. There was nothing to the performance that really made you believe that she was Jamie, or that you should really give a shit about this character. She was Jamie in name only. And if Danielle Harris was in this role, I don't think it would have made the film good. I don't think it would have made the film that much better. But it would have made that sequence have at least somewhat of an impact. But nope. Akkad didn't stand up for one of his stars. Someone that he apparently, I guess, cared for. I guess you would think that would be the case. I mean, Danielle Harris was even friends with him and the Akkads, and they did nothing. They didn't stand up for her. So, I just, when I look at things, I don't see it. I don't see Mustafa as being this grandfather figure for the franchise, and I don't see that he really cared as much about the franchise as a lot of other fans do. Because he is one of the main reasons why a lot of these mistakes continue to be made when it comes to the franchise. He's also one of the reasons why Danielle Harris got fucked over. And he's also one of the reasons why you had things done the way that they were in other installments in the franchise. Because he just could not put his ego aside for 1 second. This is especially evident in H2O, and I'll get to that when I talk about H2O. But anyway, yeah, I know it's been a bit of a runaround, but I'll get to the rest of my thoughts on this film soon enough. But I definitely wanted to mention that, because it's so frustrating, because they're supposed to be these stewards of this franchise, and like 5 years, or at least, or something like that. I mean, the last film came out in 1989, so a few years at least had gone by, and they had plenty of time to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes, they don't fuck up once again in the same fucking ways, and nope, they do it again. So yeah, really frustrating. And speaking of frustrating, this script is a frustrating, muddled fucking mess. It's such a chaotic screenplay with concepts and ideas that aren't fully fleshed out. You have concepts that are borrowed from other screenplays. For instance, the idea that Haddonfield banned Halloween. That was something that Dennis Etchison and John Carpenter came up with for their idea for Halloween 4. But their concept was much better and a whole lot more interesting. Their concept was based around how Haddonfield actually banned Halloween, and it was still banned at the time of this particular story that they were trying to tell. But instead, in The Curse of Michael Myers, in the screenplay by Dana Ferrans, it's the first time that Halloween is being celebrated after it was banned since the events of Halloween 5. And to me, that's just a waste. That's a total waste of that concept. You literally do nothing with that concept by just showing Haddonfield after the ban is lifted. Because what's the point? Then you just make it look generic as hell, and it's the same stuff we've already seen in 5 other Halloween movies. So, like, you had the opportunity to have this concept and to do something really interesting and intriguing with it, and nope, you dropped the fucking ball. And part of me does feel for Ferrans because he's a fan of this franchise, and it's an opportunity for a fan to actually leave their mark on a franchise with a screenplay, which is honestly a really cool thing. But he was also given a really tough hill to climb because he was tasked with all the explanations for the Thorn Cult and the Man in Black, and he gave it his best shot, but at the end of the day, those concepts were so flawed and so poorly conceived that there was no way that he was ever going to make them work. But he still had to throw them in there. And as a result, it just makes the franchise more convoluted, more muddled, more befuddling, and incredibly less effective as a whole. In terms of getting under your skin, in terms of really making you think. Because then they're just trying to explain everything, and they're trying to explain the unexplainable, and as a result, it makes the franchise and Michael Myers a whole hell of a lot less special. Because if you ask me, this franchise and Michael Myers are at their best when things are kept simple and to the point. When it's the unknown. When you don't know why Michael Myers, when he was a kid all those years ago, snapped and killed his sister. You don't know why he is this force of evil. You don't know why the Shape is who he is. The fear of the unknown is something that's very palpable. Something that is very common, so to speak, among everyone. Everyone is at one point or another afraid of the unknown, and the Shape taps into that fear and does so very well. And when you take away that mystique and you provide the answers to the mystery, it just makes things nowhere near as captivating. And that applies to the supernatural origins as well as the more realistic origins, like in Rob Zombie's Halloween. This franchise really started to suck when they tried to explain things and tried to give Michael Myers some sort of concrete origin. And there's a reason for that. By explaining things, you make Michael Myers and the Halloween franchise more generic, more vanilla. And it also doesn't help either that this script, you have the man in black, you establish that he's Win, which you can see coming a mile away. But anyway, you establish that, but then in the final cut of the film, he dies in the hospital massacre in a blink and you'll miss it sequence. So all this build up for jack shit, and then there's other things, like for instance Tommy Doyle, the way that he's written in this story, he starts out as a very creepy character, like he's a peeper, he's a peeping Tom, and then all of a sudden the character shifts and now he's supposed to be a hero and he's beating off Michael Myers with a lead pipe. And apparently, I don't think that was initially Daniel Farran's original idea. That's something that the studio threw in there because of screenings. Because apparently, Dimension Films thought that the core audience for Halloween and for another Halloween film was 14-year-old boys. Why? I have no fucking idea. I had no idea that an R-rated franchise had the core audience being consisted of 14-year-old kids, but, you know, what do I know? So yeah, on that front, I do feel for Daniel Farran's as well. That's another thing that I feel for him, because he totally was just screwed over. The studio just came in and was like, no, we want this, we want that, and he probably didn't have any involvement in any of it. And when Daniel's been asked about this, he says both versions are pretty poor. The producer's cut and the theatrical cut, but the theatrical cut is the worst adaptation of his story. And it's too bad because this is a script that got a lot of buzz. A Dimension exec read the first draft of the script and apparently could not sleep the night that he read it. Donald Pleaseance was a really big fan of it. It's a big reason why he actually signed on to do the film. And it ultimately didn't really come to fruition. It never really was fully adapted on the screen. And also, I think in the first draft, Jamie actually lived longer. She lived all the way until the end when she had one last final confrontation with Michael Myers. And then she would die. But I think it was more of a heroic or definitely more of a fitting demise instead of, you know, just dying alone in a barn. Oh, again with the barns, like we had like there wasn't enough stalk and kill scenes in a barn from the last film. Like, why the hell do we have to rehash that shit? So yeah, that's another thing about the script that I think kind of sucks, is the rehashing of things. Once again, Michael Myers killing somebody in a barn, and that also makes it feel even more like Friday the 13th. You know, like Friday the 13th Part 3. Oh no! Instead of Jason this time killing people in a barn, it's Michael Myers. And I guess Farran's also had an idea to make things even more complicated, and with an even deeper conspiracy with the Thorn cult, where the whole town of Haddonfield was in on it. And I'm glad that actually wasn't in this movie, because that would have made this story and this Thorn cult bullshit even more insulting, if you ask me, even more infuriating. And on the I'm trying to think of the right word. On the notion of the producer's cut, I'm saving my thoughts on that for much later, because I honestly am not in the mood to watch two versions of Halloween 6 back to back. I'd rather move on. So yeah, this screenplay is not the best. Also, when it comes to the characterization, the characters, there's no characters in this that you really give a shit about, other than maybe Loomis, but he's barely even in the movie. But that's not really necessarily 100% the screenwriter's fault, because in the theatrical cut, his scenes were cut down considerably because the 14-year-old boys thought that the scenes with Donald Pleasance were boring. Go figure. You know, Donald Pleasance has been a key part of this franchise from the beginning, and the fans know that, and the people that you were, I guess, so I would think you would be appealing to the most, would be expecting as much Loomis as the film could possibly have. But instead, nope, 14-year-old boys, I guess their opinion rules. So yeah, Loomis is barely in the theatrical cut, and that's not necessarily 100% Franz's fault. But then the other characters, Jamie, don't give a shit. Kara Strode is just poor woman's Laurie Strode. Don't really care that much about Danny Strode, and they set things up with this character as if he's also being spoke to by the man in black, or this voice, and the same voice that told Michael Myers to kill his sister, and nothing's ever done with that. There's this baby that apparently Michael Myers had with Jamie, which is really fucked up in another way, but in this version, in the theatrical cut, that's not really explained that way. It's just some random baby, I guess, or it's some kind of the result of some kind of genetic experiment, but none of it's really ever fleshed out. So I think you're still led to believe that Michael Myers molested his sister in order to have this bastard child. It's fitting because Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers is the bastard child of the franchise. So you have this baby, but then nothing's ever done with the baby either. And speaking of the baby, like, how the hell did somebody at the train station not find this baby before Tommy Doyle? I mean, there was a literal blood trail to the bathroom where the baby was at. So yeah, the script, not really the best when it comes to those moments either. But yeah, the characterization, don't give a shit about Tommy Doyle. I like Paul Rudd as a person, and I thought that he did some good work later on in his career, but I didn't care for this character of Tommy Doyle. I didn't find him funny. I found him more creepy than anything else, and I didn't buy him as a badass. It was laughable. And then other characters like like Beth, or Tim Strode, or Deborah. I guess John Strode is the only one that left any sort of impression, but that's because he was such a piece of shit who abused his daughter. But I mean, other than that, really nothing. The characters were just really one note. And the plot I didn't give a shit about. I didn't care about the Man in Black and more of the Man in Black. I didn't care about the Thorn cult. Did nothing for me. I was just waiting for the film to end. And finally, rest in peace. And there are a lot of other things, too, that just were really shitty when it comes to this film. Alan Howarth's score, there were a few bits and pieces, some few notes here and there that I didn't mind, but for the most part, it was a massive just an absolute misfire. The guitar twangs were just awful, and so were the jump scare sounds and all the other extra added sound effects. They did nothing to actually enhance the scenes that they were in. They just detracted from them. And apparently, it's not really 100% Alan Howarth's fault, because that shit was added later in post without his involvement. It's another studio mistake, another studio fuck up. The cinematography by Billy Dixon, I honestly thought sucked dick, because it just was very flat, very lifeless looking. Nothing really looked that great from a cinematography standpoint. The editing by Randolph K. Bricker was as subtle as a brick to the fucking face. I hated the way this film was edited. It was like it was edited with a fucking blender turned all the way up. It was just unbelievably obnoxious, with the quick cuts and the flashes, and it's just awful. Some of the worst editing I have ever seen. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making it up. I'm not just, throwing that out there for dramatic effect. This is some of the worst editing that I've ever witnessed, because it actually physically gave me a headache at a certain point in the film. And performances. I mean, other than Donald Pleasance in his last role, and Bradford English as Family Dollar F. Thomas Wilson, because that's honestly what he was. I mean, the producers, I think they wanted to get F. Thomas Wilson, and they wanted this father to essentially be Biff, but they couldn't get him, or he didn't want to do it, so they had to settle for Bradford English. I mean, there are so many scenes in this film where you think that he's going to turn around and he's going to, say, "You butthead, hey Michael, why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?" But that never happens. But those two performances were the best out of the entire movie for me. And that's really not saying much. And the kills, there's one good kill. There's a really good kill, to be honest. Probably the best thing about the movie is when the asshole father, Family Dollar F. Thomas Wilson, he gets electrocuted, and then he gets blown up. And I thought that was a really good effect by John Carl Buechler. And that was one of the things that they reshot. There's some footage that was not put in the film, that was deleted, that was pretty good in terms of the gore. When Michael Myers shoves this guard's head through a gate, in the unrated footage on a bonus feature on the Blu-ray, it's actually a really cool looking effect. But in the theatrical cut, it's cut down so much that you barely even see anything. And there's another nice little bit of gore when a guy gets his head twisted and you see his neck bone sticking out and some blood. So that was an alright sequence. And I will give the production designer and the art director credit for the fall atmosphere for this movie, as well as the costume designer for the look of the cult in terms of their robes. I thought that was pretty unique in terms of the overall appearance. And I'm trying to think of anything else that's noteworthy or worth of dishonor or worth ranting about. Oh yeah, the ending that was just rushed painfully, and it shows. Michael Myers gets stopped once again by getting beat in the face. What is up with this franchise at this point wanting to beat Michael Myers off? So they beat him in the face with a 2x4 in Halloween 5, and then in Halloween 6 they beat him in the face with a pipe. And for some reason, once he gets injected with this green shit, which might as well be the fucking reanimator serum for all I fucking know, it makes him bleed green goo? Since when was Michael Myers a fucking mutant? Why is he bleeding green goo? Like he got covered in toxic waste. What the fuck? So, yeah, he gets beat once again by getting hit in the face. And then the ending is just a shot of Michael Myers' mask on the ground with a syringe of that green shit. And then Loomis screaming, dubbed over. Just like... And then you have In Memory of Donald Pleasance. I'm like, don't you fucking do that. Oh, he deserved better. He deserved better for, in memory of, than that fucking shit. God. So yeah, as you can see, I am not a fan of Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. Even at 88 minutes, this film is sluggish as hell. Because you don't care about anybody. There's no genuine suspense. Moments that are, could be visceral or could be thrilling or tense are ruined by the editing or ruined by the sound effects. There's too many useless, dumb jump scares. And it's just so chock full of stupidity and idiotic decisions. Oh, let's kill off Jamie and make the same mistake that we did when we killed off Rachel in the beginning of Halloween 4. Let's beat Michael Myers off again. Because, I guess, why the fuck not, I guess. Because I guess we don't know what else to do at this point. Just gotta keep beating Michael Myers off in the face. Yeah, it's just astonishing. And it's so frustrating that the same fuck-ups happened all over again with Halloween 6, with The Curse of Michael Myers. They didn't learn from their mistakes. They just committed the same crimes and just made the same fucking errors and committed the same cinematic sins. And it could have been easily avoidable. That's what's so upsetting. And the film didn't do that great in the box office. It only made $15 million on a $5 million budget. And I could see why. Because it's not a very good movie. But anyway, yeah, I don't really know what else to say about Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers. I pretty much said what I wanted to say about it. Of all the directions you could take the franchise after a few years, this is the direction you take it for even further into the fucking dumpster that is on fire, that is also inside a fucking swimming pool full of shit. I mean, I got one last thing to say about this shitty sequel. This film is so bad that there is a sequence when Kim Darby, Kara's mother, is walking around the house on edge because she thinks that Michael Myers is after her, and he is. But in this sequence, there is a shot that shows a jack-o'-lantern at the end of the stairway, and the jack-o'-lantern is sitting there on a banister at the end of the staircase, and it has a look of disappointment and sadness on its face. Its smile is upside down. It's frowning. There's a frowning jack-o'-lantern that is featured in a scene in this movie. Because even the fucking jack-o'-lanterns are depressed and sick of this movie's bullshit.